Hello there peeps, this is What a Kid of the Aspie Gamer once again, and it's time to go over my final thoughts on Corpse Party Bloodcovered. This is going to be a talky bit video, so if you're expecting gameplay, I'd recommend skipping this one. No music this time because there's a lot to go over. Before we start, I want to explain that while I was mostly negative throughout the playthrough, I do see that people like this game, and I'm not trying to sway others' opinions or say, I'm the only one who's right, or anything like that. I'm just analyzing my feelings based on my experience. And there are parts of this game I do like, but we'll go over that later. For now, I want to get the bad stuff out of the way. First topic, change of focus. Compared to the original and Zero, Bloodcovered tries to focus more on the slasher-style horror aspect of the series, as opposed to the character development. The thing is, that's a huge step back in my opinion. For example, many of the Rongens take around a minute to read because they explain every single intricate detail about what's going on. A character is dying. Now, I myself have a problem with over-explaining things, and even I don't come close to this game in that regard. There is one wrong end in the game that is especially horribly written in this regard, and that is the one for when Yuka gets caught by Yuki in Chapter 3. She goes through this waking up sequence before she snaps back to reality, and then it takes a while to explain with much intricacy how her head is being cut off with a pair of scissors. I don't see the point of the wake-up sequence. It seems like unnecessary filler that serves no actual purpose other than to take up time. This problem isn't limited to the wrong ends, however. It goes into the main game as well. For example, if you're on the right track in Chapter 5, you see a cute scene of Yuka before Satoshi wakes up. It completely breaks the mood the game is trying to set. We get it, game. Yuka is cute and doesn't belong in the schoolhouse. We need to find her. Why are you showing me this? The next thing I want to go over is characters. New ones first. This game suffers from a drastic problem with new characters, where it seems like they were added only to be killed off and nothing else. I get that there's things to like about Seiko, but the thing is, the game tried to make me learn what her life was like outside school after she was already dead, by which point it was completely irrelevant. The only part about Seiko that was relevant after the fact was that Naomi killed her and didn't know until the twist at the end of Chapter 5. I'll admit, thinking about it now, that was actually an interesting plot point, but at the time I couldn't care less because the game had forced me into the I just want to get this done already mindset. Morishige is an extreme case. Half of the time, I forgot he even existed, so when he appeared, my mind would go, oh, yeah, he's supposed to be here. Right. I feel this is due to bad writing, as the only thing he truly contributes to the story is grabbing the tongue bag under Mayu's remains, and that's not much. Mayu is an interesting case. It seems like they had something going with how she befriended the ghosts, and that could have made for a really interesting plot point. And what do they do with that? They throw it at the wall and pulverize it. Quite literally, in fact. Perhaps one of the only exceptions is Yuya Kazami, because at least he does something other than die, becoming a huge threat to Yuka near the endgame. I don't like saying that the best new character is the one who became the anatomical model, but that's just how I feel about it. The old characters aren't safe from problems either. If you've heard of the trope Flanderization, that is sprinkled all over in this topic. Ayumi in the original game was clearly a coward, but never let that stop her from doing things, and she only stated once that she didn't like Yoshiki. In this game, she takes every chance she can to berate Yoshiki, and she's far less of a trooper to the point where almost every minute of the game where she's present doesn't go without a scream from her. The old Naomi clearly wasn't an ice queen, but she was still brave more than not. The new Naomi is very weak and subject to the idea of girls are helpless, possibly making her worse than Ayumi in that regard. I can understand her feelings around Seiko's death, but other than that, She's a horrible interpretation of one of my favorite characters from the original game. Satoshi, on the other hand, isn't much different than he was in the original game. The problem here is that due to the writing, he never gets a chance to truly shine since he's constantly stuck in Yuka's bathroom quest. Speaking of which, Yuka. All of her. The only time I can truly connect with Yuka in this game is when she's being chased by Yuya, because Yuya scares me, if the scream after he caught me in the blind run is any indication. Yoshiki actually wasn't too affected by this problem, however. It seems like they tried to turn up his cool guy persona, but he does enough in the game that any problems with his character are outshined by his actions. He's got to be my favorite character in the game for this reason. And that brings us to the final returning character, Sachiko. Where do I begin with this one? Sachiko was an interesting character in the original game, no matter how you look at it. Split into two different forms, her backstory is truly horrifying, and her bad side is actually really devious and vile, as well as a bit trollish. Sorry, but you're already dead. I love that part so much, that just perfectly encompasses what I like about the old Sachiko. The new Sachiko, on the other hand, is an absolute nightmare come true, and not in a good way. She doesn't do anything for the majority of the game, and they changed her good side into a completely different character. I'm going to take this moment to point out that while I don't hate Yuki, I don't think her existence justifies removing such an important part of what made Sachiko an interesting character. Back to Sachiko, while it can be argued that her backstory is possibly more horrible than what happened in the original game, I can't say I feel bad for her because of what she did afterward. The old Sachiko killed children out of anger and hatred, and while I don't condone killing out of anger, I can at least understand and empathize with her. The new Sachiko, on the other hand, kills for her own amusement, and that makes her seem less human and, ironically, less terrifying. To top it all off, the most she does throughout the entire game is just spout an empty, overly dramatic threat toward Yuka in Chapter 5. I was looking forward to seeing how Sachiko's character would evolve in the reboot, and what I got was extremely underwhelming. That's one of my biggest problems with this reboot. They ruined Sachiko, my favorite character from the original game. The next topic I'll go over is the bathroom quest. Yes, the bathroom quest. In the original game, and Zero, and even If, which as of now I have played through and recorded, the bathroom scene was a quick little event that gets immediately resolved and leads to a more important event, like being the big determinant factor in which ending you acquire in the original game. In this game, the bathroom quest lasts for at least 3 chapters and exists solely for the reason of having a bathroom quest. This is a case of terrible writing. There's more instances of moments from the original game being used in this game just so the developers could say, we used it, but the bathroom quest is by far the worst offender. The final negative topic I want to go over is the problems this game has with wrong end incorporation. At times, the game has a serious problem with giving you an idea on how to avoid a wrong end. The worst offenders, I believe, are the second wrong end in Chapter 1, that you need to read the newspaper in 3A to avoid, the third in Chapter 2, because I can imagine many people who head for the stairs first don't figure out on their own that the avoidance method is choosing where you go after Yumi goes insane, and all of Chapter 5. It gets worse when permanent wrong end locks are added to the equation. Chapter 5 is not the only chapter guilty of this, but it is by far the worst offender. It is way too simple to mess up and not realize you've messed up beyond repair until late into the chapter. And given there's only one proper end, unlike the ending ranks in the original game, it's terrible design in my opinion. It's one thing to lock the player out of bonuses in a playthrough like in Cave Story. It's a whole other to lock them out of the ending because they messed up and couldn't tell because of intentional design. So that's a lot of negativity. There's sadly not too much good for me to talk about either, but I'll say what I can. I mentioned that it seems like certain events from the original game were copied into this game just so the developers could say they used it. But I do like some of the callbacks. Namely what they did with the bloody stall scene when Yuka is going to the bathroom in Chapter 5. And of course the science lab scenario. There were also some well-written wrong ends I liked, namely the ones focused around the pool. Which is very weird. I don't even like Final Destination, so why would I like a wrong end that looked like a scene from that movie? I also like Chapter 4 a lot as a whole. I feel it's where the game shined the most. There's also one of the new characters that I actually ended up liking a bit. Miss Yui. I can't really explain this other than, especially after seeing the extra end for Chapter 4, she reminds me of my old teachers. I liked my teachers, and I miss them sometimes. Some felt like more than just teachers to me. I think Miss Yui has all the makings of an interesting character. It's a shame they didn't make use of that. Maybe it's something that the extra chapters go into, but I'll worry about that another time. So that about does it for my final thoughts. Regarding the game as a whole, I can see why Victor wanted me to play it, but if he was hoping I would like the direction the series went, I have to say, it failed. Horribly. This does not make me ecstatic for the later official games in the series. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the series, and because it was overall very negative, before we close out October, I'm going to do a quick look at the PC-98 version of the original Corpse Party. I'm looking forward to that. And with that, bye ya!